Yes, hello guys. A lot of you guys are wondering how to pass the FIFA Agent Exam. Today I'm going to be breaking you all the details how I did to pass my own exam. Okay, I'm Gaucho Brian, FIFA licensed agent living in Finland, and I'm going to be sharing my ideas on how I passed the exam so that you can also apply this or learn or for some feedback that I'm going to give you. Okay, so get a pen and paper, and then if you have registered already, let's take some note. Okay, let's go. So this is the first thing that I always tell people. If you register for the exam, you have to realize that the exam is a structural exam, okay? And you have to be very structured to be able to prepare and pass this exam. A lot of people think it's quite easy, so they don't prepare most of the time. So they always get the shock, okay? And then there's also group of people that just think it's an open book exam. Then it's quite easy for them to just go and do sing, multiple choice. It's just pick anyone you can pick and then come up. If you're lucky, you pass. If you're not lucky, you don't pass. But of course, maybe you don't have the pain points. It's not yet. You don't yet have the pain point of the exam that you want to use your license to do something. If you're serious that you want to use your license to make a living, then you are going to be focused actually on the exam. Okay. As we always do, if you're watching from somewhere, just leave your name and where you're watching from, and share whether you're taking the exam or not. Okay. Yes. So today we're going to be talking about how I passed the exam and how you can get some tips on how to pass the exam. So in this case, we're going to be looking at the structural approach of the exam, what I did, and how you can do it as well. Okay. So the first thing you have to look at is that the recent rate of the exam from the exam was launched in 2023. Okay. And then that was a 52% pass rate, which was quite okay. That's about half of the people wrote passed, which is quite good according to the recent statistics of the exam. 2024 was the next year, and then 40% passed. And 2025, which was the worst year, around 18 to 20%. That was bad. Let's say 18%. Okay, that means around 80% failed. So you can already understand the shift in dynamic of how the exam is. Probably some recent studies shows that probably is because of the shifting in the way the exam was being taken last year due to the online method that people sitting at home and writing remotely using of the software. People were not quite maybe used to the software. But with not to think too far, you have to already adapt to that so that you can learn how to use the software. Okay, I'm watching from Lyon, France. Okay, from Lyon. Yes. Are you a FIFA agent or you're trying to write the exam? Okay, good. And what's your name? Just drop your name. So I forgot to say you can drop your name, where you're watching, and then yeah, from Lyon, France. Okay, good, and welcome to my videos. But just to go ahead again, so those were the rates I mentioned. So why most candidates fail? Let's start from there. Yes, what I noticed, I'm going to give you. They underestimate the exam. That's the first thing. So a lot of people, because when you hear, which is quite normal in human nature, when you hear, for example, they're writing an exam and you say, okay, it's multiple choice. Sometimes you might be lazy to read, which is quite normal. You feel like, okay, well, even if I don't read, I don't have to, I just need to try to go and do some guesswork. If I go and if I'm lucky, I passed. But there I'll say maybe you don't really have value for the license. That's why you try to gamble, because someone who has value for the license will say, no, I want to take this serious. And then sometimes the next reason why people fail is because they think it's an open book exam, they rely on the open book format. Then you go into the exam because there's too much, it's a high pressure situation. You end up not even looking at the book, because if you cannot use the book, you are not going to use it on the exam day. Because as I explained earlier, the exam is 60 minutes and each question is 3 minutes. Okay, because you have 20 questions. So, which means you have to answer one question for 3 minutes. And if you cannot use the book, because the book is very bulky, it's about 600 to 600 something pages. If you cannot find something, you cannot use, so you cannot use the book. For example, if they ask you something on the RSTP, if you don't know where RSTP is located, if you don't know where that material is located inside 600 something pages, you cannot find it. So there you go, which means that's another reason that many people fail. Okay, then the next is that many people don't practice the questions. You don't they read, but they don't also do they don't practice the questions, the mock questions. You need to do a lot of mock questions also so that you can get used to the kind of questions that come on the exam. That's another thing. Okay, so because the questions that people set, let's say the chat GPT set and all those things, no, you have to find questions. You have to look at already the past questions that are always on the FIFA platform and try to rehearse, look at the various questions, see how FIFA is setting the puts the question so that you can understand how it goes. Those are one of the things that you have to look into. Another thing also is time management. So time management is a big thing. If you don't prepare for the exam, then you cannot manage your time. If you don't read and understand, you cannot manage your time. How do you manage your time? By only reading, because you have to learn how to read quick as possible. If you don't manage your time, how do you go inside and manage your time? It's 60 minutes, and in those 60 minutes, you have to be fast to answer those questions. And then the next thing is that people try to just cram and say, okay, try to memorize, and they say you cannot cram 600 something pages. That's not going to happen. Okay. Okay. So let's look at those are the things that make people fail. So let's look at what I focus on the smart way. So instead of reading everything randomly, I did this when I passed. The first thing, let me say, the step one was I mastered the structure. I tried to master the structure of the exam, then trying to read deep. Okay. So I looked at, I had gone through the question. I looked at things like the topics, most of the topics that I felt they were familiar to me. That, I mean, not familiar, that they were familiar. And then I tried to read. But I also started earlier a lot because apart from being reading, I started earlier practicing a lot about the question. So I could just sit sometimes and answer the question. I could sit and do a lot of things around the question. So it was quite easy for me to practice. Let's take, for example, as I did the FFAR, the FIFA Football Agent Regulation. It was easy for me to run through the RSTP regulation. So there were certain things that I could go through because I've been reading quite for a long time, looking at the training compensation, looking at on the RSTP, looking at the solidarity mechanism on the RSTP, looking at all these rules of termination. A lot of things I learned using I learned because I had the time to do that because I already knew that the exam was challenging. So I had to go and prepare a little bit more so, to get that into my system. So then the next thing I will do is that I was prioritizing to read a lot of places before a lot of topics different from others. So I was looking at the RSTP. I was reading the RSTP a lot. I was reading the FIFA Football Agent Regulation a lot. Then of course you have to look at safeguard, FIFA clearinghouse, and all those other state FIFA stages, all those other topics. But I had a structure that I was trying to look at because I was thinking that, oh, if majority of the exam is set, 40% is set at the FIFA Football Agent Regulation, 30% is set at the RSTP, it can be like that. And then so I have to prioritize those places then. But still, you still have to read the other materials, like the FIFA clearinghouse and all those other topics, because you can get three or two questions from there, and we all know that in this exam you are just entitled to fail just five out of the whole exam. That's one thing also that people don't make mention, that is very challenging. Anybody who passes this exam needs some credit, because if you think of an exam actually that you write, normally when people write an exam, they write an exam out of 50% is pass, then 50% is fail. But in this exam, actually 75% pass, which shows how difficult it is, because So if you have 100 questions, you must pass 75. I'm just giving an example. But we know we have 20 questions. People writing the exam, you have 20 questions. Now you have to pass 15. And even at that, those 15 you pass, if they give a question, let's take for example, the question have A, B, C, D, and you pass two of those questions and fail one. Let me say there were three answers right. You pass two and fail one. It is still accepted. It's still fail. So that's why it's really, really challenging. In fact, anyone who passes the exam must have studied, because the 15 questions you pass, you have to pass all completely. Out of the multiple, you have to pass all completely. So that's how challenging the exam is. And I really understand why, let's say, people can sit and they have only 18% pass rate. 18% pass. Which means if 100 people write, an 18% pass rate. I'm just giving an example. Jesus, that's really, really poor for an exam. That's low. But anyway, so that gives you the gravity of how hard the exam is, that you have to really, really, you have to sit and work hard for you to be able to achieve that. But anyways, I always say that when you pass the exam, that's a big thing. The next thing is being an agent is very, very rewarding, because you just start to be, even if you are slow. The thing with an agent is that as an agent, let's say even if you are slow in signing player, as long as you maintain your license, you have that belief that one day your life can go from zero to high, not zero to average, zero to high. Let's take for example, if you have your license and you just say, okay, you want to just work all over young kids, or let's say 15, 16 years, or let's say 15 years or 14 years, and then you move around, because that is quite, you move around just looking only 14 years. If you have talented players, and then just talk to academic directors, because they'll quite need those 14 years to come by the way to the academics, because those 14 years will register, and when those 14 years are being sold, they'll get training compensation. So it's quite easy to move a kid to go to an academy, to most academics. So if you put those kids into professional academy, then let's say in 3 years, two of those three kids can sign professional contract. If they sign a professional contract worth million, your compensation can be like, let's take for example, you can have a compensation of about 40, 50,000, 60, 70, or going to about 100,000. If they sign it, if let's take for example, if they sign a player for 200 million, and then you have 10, then you have 10% compensation. That's huge. That's 200, I mean, for 2 million, if they sign a player for 2 million, you have 10% compensation. Let's take that's like 200,000, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why I always tell people that just try to do your license, because it can take you from, and then you can, if you keep maintaining the license, it can take you from an average life to a very, very rich life, because you don't need to, yeah, it's almost like at one point in time you're going to click into living a very comfortable life. Okay, let's come back to the topics, how I did to pass the exam. So as I was saying, I prioritize a lot of articles, read them, practicing them. Mhm. So trying to make, let me say, let's take for example, if I knew that the RSTP was 40%, I mean was 30, it could be 30% of the exam coming under the RSTP. I make sure I prioritize it and read more of it than going to read FIFA statutes that probably I will get two or something questions there. So these are the things that's why I say it's always a structural exam. You have to know the format of the exam. You have to listen, talk to people, share groups on knowing how the exam function. So these were the things that I was looking for. You look at like, okay, like protection of minors. You can read into that, training compensation, solidarity mechanism, just cause and overdue payables, representation rules. So all these things are things that you look into it so that you can get an idea on how the exam is set. So termination. So let's look for it. Just to hold on that topic. What I'm saying, termination with just cause. It's almost like topics, things like you have your, I mean, without just cause, it's almost like things you don't have. You cannot terminate your contract without just cause. If not, you're going to pay compensation. Protection of minors is like always looking at minor, the rules and regulation governing minor, and then training compensation is like money paid for young players between the age of 12 to 21 when they move. or sign their first professional contract. Solidarity mechanism is also like when a transfer fee is involved, 5% goes to most of different clubs of the player, the past clubs of the player. So representation rules, so this is under like FFAR. So there are a lot of things that I'm just trying to tell you guys off head, but just because I try to look the materials every day, so I have an idea of how it goes. Then you look at things like practice scenario question. As I said, look at the mock question, try to rehearse as possible. And within the mock question, what when you rehearse, you try to look also try to use it do with a time. If you have 60 minutes, try to put yourself 60 minutes, 20 questions, and 3 minutes per question. It doesn't mean that no, I'm not saying that you do just 3 minute question, but I'm just saying that finish those questions in 60 minutes. You got because if you are writing if you're practicing, you have to practice how the exam will be because the exam is 1 hour and after 1 hour is gone. Okay, so try to adapt those systems so that it can help you. Then there's another thing we call like the open book. So if you have to practice using the book and locating the answer as quick as possible. If you take more than 3 minutes, then you're not probably you are not going to use that book on the exam day because when the time is gone, the time is gone. So normally, if you want to pass, of course, as I say, you want to pass, you have to start practicing within 2 months, 3 months. If you are doing that gradually, you have to start rehearsing as quick as possible so that you start getting used to the exam. And then another thing is try to read to understand. Don't read to cram because most of the things I try to tell you are things that are off my head. I try to read to understand the exam, to understand the scenario. Let, uh, so when I read the question, I try to imagine it also whether does this happen in real. So there are things that you just read to also understand the situation. And then you also practice, you read now to understand also the structure of the exam. Practice this thing, practice them weekly. All this kind of the exam format, all these kind of things are going to help you. So those are the basic things that you need to do to be able to really, let me say, uh, get grasp of the exam. So let's give an example, or not even an example. So before going into the exam, you must have known that the exam is 60 minutes. There's no way you should be going to the exam not knowing this, the exam, not knowing these things. The exam is 60 minutes. You are going to have 20 multiple choice questions, and inside those questions, you have to pass 15, and inside those 15, you have to pass. You must pass if you have one question with four, I mean with A, B, C, D, you must have all those the answers that they are demanding from you right. Okay, there's no way you fail some. So that's why the exam is tricky. So all these are the things that you have to have locked into your head, knowing that you have to have all these things prepared, and you should be zoned in. What I mean zoned in, you should be that focused that because 1 hour of that is 1 hour and it determines your life as an agent. So the thing is when you're an agent, when you have the license, you're totally different from when you don't have the license because the people who don't have license, the reality is I get hundreds of calls on my Instagram, my phone, everything like, hey, can I send you a player so that you try to can I send you a player so that you try to put into your agency and sell for me? Then after all those things. But when you're working with club, because clubs need a specific player, so you won't be taking all those players from people. But this is also because they didn't write the agent the license, they didn't pass the exam or whatsoever. So you don't want to be in this kind of situation that each time you're asking for help for people that please can you I have this good right back, can you put it under your agency? That's when you don't have the license because you're going to turn into someone that you are always needing someone to work. But when you have the license, you can go, let's take for example, like sometimes, like most of the like in the summer, what I do when I drive my car, I go to probably if they're playing a game in my city, I just sit there, fold my arms. When someone is good, I'm just observing because I'm scouting the person. And after I can say, and after that, I can approach if it's on the underage person, you try to find and approach the parents, and then you speak to the player. That's do you know why that's because I know I have a license. I know all those things. If I sign the player comes to my agency, That's in the summer. That's how I, let's say, I think in the summer I was just from training someone, and then when I was coming back home, I just said, let me stop by to see how they are playing a game. Then I saw this young talented kid stood there for 10 minutes. He scored a hat trick, 3 goals. Then I just asked someone about the name of the team because he was he was an underage person. You cannot approach him. Of course, I know people do that, but I just wanted to be like professional. You cannot approach him. So I just took the name of his team, tried to Google, and found the coach of that team, and rang him and said, okay, I would like to come and I saw a player in your team. I'd just like to come and scout and see how he's doing because he did well in this game. And the coach gave me the timetable of when they're having their next game. When I came, I watched him and I said, okay, yeah. And he scored also another hat trick. So scouted him, brought him into my agency. Now he was playing for an amateur club there. And then the next thing I took him to a professional team, academy, and now he's playing there. But all this thing happens just because, do you know why? Because I have a license that I can take someone to go and present into another club. Of course, you have to have connections. That's another topic for another day. That most of you guys, when you have your license, teaching you how to build your connection. But all these things happen because I have the confidence, I have the license that I can stand in front of a academics, head of recruitment of an academy or sport director and speak. When you don't have the license, now you start trying to not really approach because the people will look at you like, well, why are you doing this? You're not a professional. So you see, that's why I say it's very important for you to have the license and focus because your life can live from from average level to very high level. Let's take, for example, you bring a player at an academy. After 2 years, let's say the player is 14. After 2 years in Europe, that player is entitled to sign a professional contract. What if he signs a professional contract, let's say at 16? You start getting commission. Then you don't know one of the big boys, let's say, for example, Arsenal or whatsoever, come calling. The moment those kind of teams start calling for your player that you're an agent to him, your life changes. So this is how you have to take this. Is I'm explaining all these stories just because to just tell you people that your license, you need to take it serious. Yes, because when I was writing, I would sit on the couch, look at the book, look at the computer. But because I had analyzed I had analyzed it in myself that this license, it's the thing that I have to have because I'm study sport management to graduate with a bachelor in sport business and a sport instructor, but also I do coaching. So there are a lot of things I do, but the license was a thing that I felt like it's quite comfortable because I could travel, go to different places just to scout players, like how I go to Norway, how I go to Denmark, speak with sporting directors. So all these things, just because you do most of these things because of the license you have, because you feel like, okay, when I have the license, I have the power to be able to. Let's take, for example, even someone doesn't invite me, of course, but most of the time it's good to go by invitation because you don't need to spend your money and go somewhere without invited. But when you're approaching clubs and you're giving them a message and then you're putting because when you're an agent, you have you have your license number that when someone takes the number, the person hits the number on the computer, the person can see your details. So when I'm writing an email to sporting director, I always try to differentiate myself from any other person writing an email. First, it ends with my FIFA license agent number, just to show that okay, this guy is a professional, he's a licensed agent. So that gives me already leeway for people to respond that okay, this is a professional. Yeah. Whereas many people might write and don't get reply, but once I'm writing, I always put those details because the person sees that okay, this is an agent, and for the sporting director as well, he might be saying, well, I need to reply to this guy because tomorrow we might work. He might bring a player for me. So this is just how these are the little bit of tips that people do to get response. But anyway, let's jump back into what I was saying. This was just a motivation for you people to say, for you people to know that you have to put an effort so that when you're writing on April 28th, 29th, and 30th, you should try to pass. You should try to work hard to be able to pass on that day. So work hard just for that 60 minutes because after that 60 minutes, it's only after another year. And you might not be You might not be, let's say, you might not be have the energy to write because, as I said, a lot of people I wrote with, they don't write anymore because they got discouraged. Also, that okay, I didn't make it this time, probably, and the exam is getting. It seems as if the exam is getting more tougher because from 52% in 2023, you come to 40% 2024, and now 18% 2025. Let's see how 2026 will look like. So, but I think we might have a slight better result because it was the first time that the format of the exam changed. So people didn't probably know how to use the software because now you have to use the software and the monitor sit in your room or your house. So let's see how this 2026 look like. And yeah, so let's move forward. Let's look at some past questions, and then I'm going to explain how it will. I'm going to explain the questions as well. So let's take, for example, they say a player terminates contract during protected period without just cause. Does he have just cause? So the question is, so this is what I always say, you have to learn how to interpret question as quick as possible. A player terminates contract during protected period without just cause. First, you have to know what is a protected period, and secondly, what is the consequence. So a protected period is a period where anybody terminating a contract is under high risk. You have huge financial, sporting sanctions and compensation. So if you the player terminating a contract, you have huge consequences because it's under protected period. Of course, even if you terminate a contract when it's not in protected period without just cause, you are still going to face consequences. So what is just cause also? Your just cause means you're terminating a contract without reason. That's why they call just cause. So these are the little bit of terminology that when you're reading, you need to understand these things so that at least you have an idea of how the exam is being set. So that, let's take for example, because if you don't read these things, when they say a player terminates a contract during protected period, first of all, you need to know what is protected period. If you have no idea, then you don't even know. Then they say without just cause. You need to know what is just cause and what. So all these things are the things that you need to know. So to answer this question, a player terminates a contract during protected period without just cause, and then they say consequences. They say A. What are the consequences he has? A. Only warning. B. Sporting sanctions plus compensation. C. Free transfer. D. Only club sanction. So, as I explained already earlier, the answer here is B. Sporting sanction plus compensation, because when you terminate a contract during the protected period without just cause, you will face sporting sanction as a player, then plus compensation. Okay. So those are the things that you need to. Okay, so let's look at question 2. A 16-year-old moves because parents relocate for non-football employment. Okay, is okay for non-football employment. Is the transfer allowed? That's why they ask. So a 16-year-old moves. So you have to understand already. A 16-year-old moves. Okay, now they haven't told us whether they 16 years old lives in Europe or Africa. But let's go again. A 16-year-old moves because parents relocate for non-football reason. So that is good because let's take for example first, if your parents move for non-footballing reason as a minor, that is okay, you can play football. But if your parents moved, let's take for example Arsenal wanted to buy a 16-year or 14 years old player, and then his parents decided that no, we cannot miss this chance, we have to find a job to move there so that our son can play football. That is, you're moving because of footballing reason. And if FIFA finds out that, you will get some punishment. Okay, and the club will have a problem also as well. But now they say a 16-year-old moves because parents relocate for non-footballing reason. They are trying to make that no. Let you understand the question. Is the transfer allowed? They say A, no, no. B, yes, if Article 19(2)A conditions meet. C, only domestically. D, requires agent approval. So the answer here is still B. Yes, if Article 19(2)A conditions met. So what are these conditions that are met? Met that the player has to be uh, there has to be an academic for the player to continue his education. All those kind of rules, those are the things that you have to. You can go more into details if you want to find more about this on the. This is under RSTP. This was also one of the things that, let's take for example, if you want to verify an answer, just me reading this knows that it's under the RSTP. But someone who have not studied this thing, you will not know whether it's under RSTP or whether it's under FIFA statutes or whatsoever. So, for example, if me reading this question, if I was to write, I'll just run and go under. After answering the question, if I want to be also sure, I'll go under RSTP, look on minor conditions of minor. You understand? I'll look under minor because the player that talking 16-year-old is a minor. So, but that's under RSTP. So you see how the exam, how it goes. So these are the vital things that you need to look into it. Let's look for the third question. Salary unpaid for 65 days. Okay. So first of all, just that first part, salary unpaid for 65 days. If a club, I'm just trying to make people understand how this is how, when you're reading the question, you should already be trying to interpret the scenario into your head. So let's say salary paid for on 65 for unpaid for 65 days. Salary unpaid for 65 days. 65 days, that is 2 months. That's 2 months. That's 2 months, 5 days. Okay. And if you read also under unpaid salary, if you have come across this, you already know that when a club doesn't pay a player salary for 2 months and then the player sends a notification to the club, the next thing is the player has just cause to terminate his contract. So because I know that already, that is the rules and regulation, now when I'm reading this question, I'm already processing that already into my head to get my answer as quick as possible. So let's take, for example, salary unpaid for 65 days, which is already more than 2 months, and then 15-day notice given. Player may A, suspend only, B, terminate without just cause, C, request extension, D, nothing. I think you people can already get the answer from here. So the answer is B, terminate without just cause. So because he has the right, they have not paid him for 2 months, and he has also given a 15-day notice to. He has given a 15 days notice to the club, and and they have not been a response. So this is under the RSTP also. You can look that under Article 14B, if I'm not mistaken. 14B is here, or the RSTP. And then the fourth question is under training compensation. So as I said, when I get a name, I try to already imagine it. So if you under training compensation, you should already know what is training compensation. So let's look. So training compensation first. Training compensation is a payment given to players when they make their first international transfer or they sign their first professional contract. And the age is between 12 to 21. It applies between 12 to 21. So now that's the idea I already know about training compensation in my head. So when I read this question, let's look at training compensation applies when A, first professional contract signed. That is correct. B, any transfer. No, it's only international transfer. So B is wrong. C, after 25. C is wrong because training compensation only works between the age from 12 to 21. And then D, only international. So it can only be only international. So now it's when the player signs, the answer is A, when the player signs his first professional contract. So you see, I've just been eliminating the wrong ones and I've found my answer. Then we look at the question of solidarity. Solidarity applies when. So they're talking about solidarity mechanism. So when is solidarity? So before you want to know when solidarity applies, you already need to know what is solidarity mechanism. Solidarity mechanism is when there's an international transfer, international transfer of a player, then 5% of that of that money. Let's take for example, 5% of that money is shared to the club that developed that player between the age of 12 to 23, not 21, 12 to 23 now. That's solidarity mechanism. So because I have this info about solidarity mechanism on my head, so when it's talk of now, the question is solidarity applies when A, contract expires. I know that's wrong. B, international transfer during contract. So I know that is okay. C, retirement, that is wrong. D, domestic transfer only. So using the principle of elimination, I know the answer is B, international transfer during contract. Then the next question is representation agreement with an individual maximum duration is. So first, you're reading this question. What is representation? What is representation agreement? Representation is when you are as an agent, you are representing a player. Yes, and now this question is talking representation agreement with an individual maximum. What is the maximum duration? So if you check also under representation, and this is under the FIFA Football Agent regulation. I think the page number, if I'm not mistaken, is like from page 321. No, from is it 270 something to 321, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, not to, let me go straight to the answer. So representation, if you read also, if you go under that, you find the table of content, you see you go to representation, you can try to read it. It states that maximum duration of a contract is 2 years, renewable renewable, not a renewable, yes, but not automatic. Not there's not an automatic renewable. So after the contract, after the 2 years, let's say for example, if you had a maximum representation agreement with the player, with your client, and when that elapses, you have you have to sit that client down, or you people have to speak. There's no automatic renewal. Okay, FIFA does this. I'm going to explain. FIFA does this so that no one is attached to another person. Then the player cannot move freely to another agent, because that's why you see players change agent a lot because of this issue. If you were working with an agent for 2 years, or you had a 2 years representation agreement, and the agent was a bad agent, you just wait for that. You just wait within 6 months actually before your representation agreement is finishing as a player. You can start talking to other agents. And then after some time, when the agreement finishes, you change agent. So this is how it goes in the industry. But let's stick to this question. Representation agreement with an individual. What is the maximum duration? The maximum duration is 2 years. Okay, so the answers were A 3 years, B 5 years, C 2 years, D unlimited. So the answer is C, 2 years. Okay, question 7 is dual representation is allowed between. So now we have to know what entity. Dual representation. If you also read about dual representation, you have also the engaging entity, the releasing entity. The engaging entity is like the signing club, and then the releasing entity is like the buying club and the selling club. So engaging is like buying, releasing is like selling club. So you have to know this terminology also. So now let's look at the question. Dual representation is allowed between A, releasing plus engaging, releasing plus engaging. So dual representation cannot be allowed between a buying and a selling club. It doesn't work like that. So B, individual plus an engaging. Yes, the answer is B, because a dual representation can be allowed between an individual and an engaging with like a buying club, but it cannot be between buying and selling club. So C, all parties. D, no. So the answer here is B. Again, if you want to read about this, you can also go under the FFAR, that's the FIFA Football Agent Regulation, Article 12. You can look at about I think page number 8. If you want to, yes, you can have a look about it there. Okay, question 8. Agency employee may approach a player. I go again. Agency employee may approach a player. A, yes. B, with supervision. C, no. and D, if experience. So the question here is, if you have an agency, because you need to learn how to interpret a question. If you have an agency and then you hire people, let's say, for example, the scouts, people taking the bookmakers, your accountants, and whatsoever they're in that agency. A, can your accountant in that agency approach a player to do representation agreement? So this is the question. So that's why I say in the exam, you also learn, you need to know another part of passing the exam is learning how to interpret the questions. So the answer here is C, no. So an agency employee cannot approach a player. Okay, only you, the agent with a license, have right to approach and sign a player. Okay, question 9. We're having 10 questions to go. So question 9, we go. Let's see. Do I have a question here? Okay, trying to write the exam. Okay, from France, trying to write the exam. Okay, that's good. And then that's great. You try to write the exam. Yes, you just need to keep studying, and I wish you best of luck when you write. The moment you pass the exam, that's the best feeling. Then you become officially an agent. Then you can start representing players. Yeah. So, but of course, for now, you can start like just trying to know people, know clubs, and everything. Not to say you're an agent, because the thing with the thing many people make a mistake also is that people go with the idea of saying that, okay, I'm an agent, when they are not an agent. Then they go talking to players. Yes, this happened in the industry a lot. I'm going to tell you that. But the thing is that if FIFA finds out, or if a club reports you that this player is talking to, I mean this person with the name is speaking to our player, then let's say, and they give your name. When you register for it, when you want to when you register for your exam trying to write, FIFA is going to blank your name because that name has come on that report. So, but this was just some a little bit of caution what I'm talking. I'm saying. I'm not saying that people you are going to do that. I'm just going to trying to give an advice. But let's try to run through the last few questions. What was question 9? Protected period last A, 1 season, B, 2 season, three seasons if under 28 at signing, D, entire contract. I think I've spoken about a protected period a lot. Yeah. So I think most of you, the people who have been listening, can already understand. Okay, the answer is C. So protected period, as I said, is a period in the players it's a period where when you sign a contract, you cannot breach that contract. But if you're 28, if you're under 28, your protected period is 3 years. If you're above 28, your protected period is 2 years. So protected period lasts 3 seasons if you're under 28, if you're under 28, and 2 seasons if you're above 28. So the answer is C, 3 seasons if under 28 at signing that contract. I used to give an example of this. My last video, so I was talking about Bruno, because when Bruno is Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United. He signed. I think he signed his contract. He signed a contract August 2024, and he was 29 years old then, which means he had passed already the 28 years old. So which means in his protected period, he's going to have he's going to last 2 years. So between 30 and 31, Bruno could not breach that contract with Manchester United. If not, he's going to pay huge compensation. So that's a good, perfect example for someone that is playing that most of you people know that I can give an example of. Okay. So last question here, solidarity percentage. So solidarity percentage: A, 3%, B, 5%, C, 10%, and D, 2%. So here they're asking what is solidarity percentage. So as I explained, solidarity percentage is 5%. It's 5%. And how solidarity works, I think we already there was a question about this. Solidarity works when, let's take for example, if a player is moving, is transferring internationally. Let's take for example, which player can we give an example of? Okay, let's take for example, Neymar moved to Paris. Neymar moved from Barcelona to Paris Saint-Germain, was 220 million. That was this transfer 20. This was like 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he moved from Paris Saint Germain for 220 million, which is the highest transfer it has ever existed in football. He moved from Barcelona to Paris Saint Germain. That move, so that move now will involve 5% of that money, because one thing many people don't understand about football business is that, or transfer, is that when someone says they have transferred, Barcelona sold to Neymar for 220 million to this club, to Paris Saint Germain. But part of that transfer of the money given to Barcelona, that 220, part of that transfer also, there's 5% of that money will be going to a lot of the club that trained Neymar. So let's take, for example, Barcelona got 220 million, but they'll be giving 5%, just for example, 5% of 220 million. If you calculate that, you're going to see. So let's see. Oh, I could check that. Yeah, okay. Let's say 5%. 5% of of 220 million. What's 5% of 20? Yeah. Okay, so 11 million. Okay, so let's take for example. So let's take for example. So 11 million of that 220 million that the Neymar was being transferred was being shared to Neymar's that Santos, all the clubs that Neymar passed through. Okay, all his formative clubs that passed through till he turned 23, before he turned 23. So that's how solidarity mechanism applies. But this question here, they just say, what is the percentage of solidarity mechanism, which is 5%. But I was trying to go a little bit more deep, that how the solidarity works. That's why also you see most clubs, you can see a club with is just focused on just training young, talented players and selling. The reason why that club is doing that, because they know that when they are focused on good talented players, if those players go and sign professional contracts, they'll be getting training compensation, they'll be getting solidarity mechanism, and those money they can take and rebuild their club. That's how FIFA has made so that all these young amateur clubs that build talented or hidden gems, as people may call it, when they go on to sign their first professional contract or make international transfer, they get money from that to build the academy. So sometimes you see, let's take for example, you see a club in Africa or an academy. Most people do this, that that they have academy, that the player. Many people don't know how the kind of money academies get, but academies, they have a lot of money also, because they train players a lot, and then when they sell those players, let's take for example, I come from Cameroon, like my country. We have a lot of academies there. So when they train players a lot, those players come to Europe, especially France, in a contract. When those players sign a professional contract, that academic has been training that young player, let's take, for example, from 13 years to maybe 17 years. 17 years. So when the player signs his first professional contract, there's huge percentage of huge compensation going to that club. Going to the academy in Cameroon. Okay, so this is how they make their money. So when the player signs any contract, compensate if he goes now, if he's sold from that club to another club, solidarity mechanism applies. These things happen till the player, on if only it happens unless the player is, for solidarity mechanism, unless the player is already above 23, and for this training compensation, unless the player is above 2021, above 21 years. So these are also the ways that academies, you see someone just focus on training players. You might say, what is that? What does that person gain after just training these players? Actually, he doesn't actually make money because he's not having professionals in there. No, he might not have professionals there, but he's getting a lot from the players here so that they are going to on to make their professional debut elsewhere. It's almost like also in England you have the championship clubs and all those other little clubs that train young players, academies, and send them to the Manchester United, the Manchester City, all those. Of course, these clubs have their academies, but when you train someone, let me say if a kid comes to Manchester United when he's 18 or 17 years, when he makes his Premier League debut, the club that or the academy that trained that kid when he was from the age of 12 to 16 gets all the rewards that they have been training that kid for. And at that high level, you can understand that the compensation will be quite high also. So these are the things that many people, of course, people don't need to understand this because they're not actually in the football business, but many people don't understand this a lot because they just see you just see more always on you just see mostly the transfer fee. Let's take for example if they say a player for 100 million, you just say, oh my god, that player has gone for 100 million, but you don't see also the people benefiting from things. So it's a chain, it's a business that it helps the person who there are some people who are just focused on I want to train just youth players so that I can sell them. Then in future, when those players sign professional contract, I get my money. So that's how the business is. So I think we're going to end here. Where what time is? Let's say 51 minutes. Yes, we have gone so much far today. So, but yes, all these things I always explain here is just for you people to also get an idea of how the football world works, and the more you know about these details, also a little bit how things happen, you can get some few questions or a question in the exam that you apply your common knowledge. Because I always say it's quite easy, not easy, it's helpful if you have football common knowledge, then you know what to apply. You know what to apply when you're writing the exam. Because some questions you use your common sense. For example, most questions always come like they say there's this 16 years old travels to Brazil, all those kind of things. He travels to Brazil for an academic for a study for his studies. Then out of a sudden, he signs a contract with a club there, and they start asking you, A, is he allowed to sign that contract? B, and all these kind of little things that you have to apply common sense to be able to you have to apply common sense to be able to know what is happening. So also part of the exam also is you learning how to apply common sense, your common knowledge, knowing that for someone knowing that if someone is moving to Brazil, when you're moving based on studies, you cannot sign any professional contract. Those little things that you should have an idea that you should already know that if you are or if a questions or ever come that you're moving to a country based on studies, you cannot sign professional contract. Let's say if you're 16 years, move to Brazil for studies, you cannot sign any professional contract. You can only you can you can only play only with an amateur club, not professional. If you're professional, you have to go back. You have to go back to your country. So these are the little things that you have to get idea of, so that when this common knowledge comes to the exam, you just apply it on the question that is being put in front of you. Okay, we will have to end here, and tomorrow, next day is another topic again. I think same 9:30. Today I was a little bit late because I'm still preparing. So, but tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow I'll be here 9:30. So that we can kick on from there. Yes, I think I already prepared what I will discuss with you tomorrow. Anyways, I'll leave it here, and then tomorrow 9:30 Eastern European time. See you here again. So turn on your notification, and also if you are if you are trying to write the exam and I'm hosting a course, I think most of people here already know I'm hosting a course. The course is coming. The waiting list will be open soon this month in March. Yes, this month, because yes, I wanted to open the waiting list in March so that we have 1 month, April, to go. So the waiting list will open this March, early March, and then for those registering, you try to register, because we will have specific numbers. When the number closes, then the waiting list also closes. Then we try to talk to those people and how they can pass the exam. Last year, some people that I used to speak with them just on YouTube, yes, but, and then also the ones I did some few classes last year also with people that they approached me, and yeah, it was quite happy to hear that they passed the exam. Actually, this thing when you actually teach something to someone, then the person actually makes it's more refreshing than even sometimes financial rewards. So it was actually also great to hear those things from people that okay, just by also sometimes listening, they got a lot of knowledge from listening to my videos. Yeah, of course, it doesn't get too much views, but the thing is that I'm more focused on more on the people that are writing the exam. It's more helpful if I get like people that they are getting value for this rather than me doing something that okay, I get a lot of views talking about maybe trending topics and whatsoever, but not getting my field being spoken about. Because sometimes you sit and you said, okay, you are just going to maybe focus on yourself, but this is also me focusing on myself is also teaching you people, because the more I speak here about these things, it helps me when I enter into a tea room. Those things are on my head. So, for example, when I sit on a board meeting, I'm not board meeting. I'm not a club member. When I sit on a um, table with the CEO trying to interview the CEO, if he says anything about training compensation, everything is up here. So first, if he asks me any question about training compensation, because most of the time when you speak with the CEOs and all, they want to get a few ideas about how the agent works. Then, or you are speaking with sporting director when you're negotiating, or if you're negotiating a deal with a sporting director. Part of that deal is that you must have known the rules and regulation a lot. Because let's take, for example, if you don't know the rules and regulation and the sporting director just say, okay, your client, you want to play, we can just offer him just salary package. And if he's good, that's it for you. That's all we can offer. But for someone who knows the rules and regulation, he knows how to press those buttons, to manipulate and say, okay, no, uh, what about offering this salary and then certain percentage for bonuses, certain percentage like this, appearance, amount of appearances like this, or he can trigger certain compensation. So you start thinking how you can trigger those things. But for someone who doesn't know those rules and regulation, the person is like, oh, anyways, I have no idea, or I have no idea. I just have to answer to what they say. So that's also a huge part. But anyways, uh, it's been nice having this long time, yeah, speaking with people. So for those who always come back, because I know most of the time people also come back and watch the videos. For those who come back to watch the videos, my course will opens on the will open on the 7th of April. We'll be we'll be talking about the I'll be talking about the FIFA Agent Exam, how to write from. We are going to put a structured approach. So the structured approach is you having the exam format into your head. It has to be something that also you're writing the exam, but also my point is also that I'm targeting the people I'm teaching and the people I want to teach. I'm also targeting a higher percent pass rate, because that will also do me good for me to teach people and they have a higher percent pass rate. So most of the people I'm teaching, I have to be like, we have to focus on a lot of structural approach from what we can, let's say, after me explaining certain things, how you can approach the exam, then we do past questions, how you can find, if you, let's say, how you structure yourself in writing the exam. So apart from answering or looking at we have 3 classes. Let's say we have on the 7th, we have a class in April. I think on the 14th, we have a class. I think on the 21st, we'll have a class. Within those 3 classes, we should have, by the end of each class, we should have past question. Then we should also have something that we should have the project showing that how you can enter the exam, how you can focus on targeting to answer the questions, how you can use the open book to find a question as quick as possible. So all these things have to be touched into the exam, so that when you enter the exam, the first thing you look at the questions, you answer the ones that you can answer, because it's 100% sure you're not going to know all the questions. That's for sure. So when you answer the ones you can answer, you answer. The ones you cannot answer, you leave it now. Now you need to use the book to apply that. And now if I've not taught you how to use the book, it's going to be hard. You have to learn how to use the book within less than 3 minutes. So if a question comes under, let's say, RSTP and it's under training compensation, you should already know that training compensation is from page this to this, and how to find that using that book within, let's say, 1 minute minimum, I mean maximum 1 minute. Then the next is you go to, after 1 minute, you go to locate where the answer is and do it. So it has to be this format that I have to try to teach you people, go through all the stages so that when you enter the exam, then we start doing rehearsal also actually. So for example, I can ask a question here, and then I teach you how to find it as quick as possible. So we have to do all those things practically so that you can apply it within that 1 hour on the day you're writing, so that it can help you. Okay, so that's just a little bit of tips. If you have not registered also for the exam, you can check most of my videos I post, like this video. I think the link is there on the description part. Try to register, and then it will be open. The exam will be the registration will be open soon. So endeavor to register before the maximum people, before it is closed, so that you don't get left out. Anyway, and for those who also have been sending me emails, I think I responded to all your emails today. So do check your inbox for those who have been sending the emails. Everything is fine now. Okay, I think I'll end here, and then tomorrow we continue so that someone can go and rest. Okay, take care and talk to you tomorrow. See you 9:30 Eastern European time tomorrow. Bye for now. Cheers.